From Los Angeles, I'm Eddie Garcia. He's Doug Stolhand. Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Puck Podcast. It is April the 27th in our first period of a three-period podcast, which you're watching right now on YouTube. We're going to recap the first 9 days of the opening of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. We have a second period, which you will only know if you listen to the podcast. It's our special feature or interview segment. This week, Doug and I are going to discuss the coaching changes and front office changes around the NHL. And in the third period, also available on the podcast, it's our fan feedback segment where we read listener emails and we have our off-ice reports telling you what's going on in our lives. Again, you can access all three periods on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you're seeing, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and get notified when our latest shows are out.
Eddie and I have been doing this here Puck Podcast every single week for the past 19 years. And we have combined for over 50 years of sports media experience. We've covered the Stanley Cup, the draft, the All-Star Game, and much more, all in person. And each week we cover all 32 teams. If it's a big story, then that's where we start, regardless of where it happens. And to start this week's show, I now turn it over to my good friend, my co-host, and a man who told me he goes to see the Minecraft movie 5 times a week to collect the popcorn that is thrown at the screen, Eddie Garcia.
I've heard that movie is making a gajillion dollars. So there you go. I don't know.
Well, it's not made for us, but
it's definitely not made for me.
Yeah, the people that are into that are loving it.
You could give me a free ticket and free snacks, and I would still not go. But you know what I would eat popcorn for and watch and have been watching? The Stanley Cup Playoffs. Obviously, that is the big story, to say the least. It is the greatest playoffs in all of sports. What we're going to do is give you a brief recap of each game. Obviously, we can't go too far in depth, or else this would be like a 4-hour episode. But we're going to go series by series. We're going to start in the order in which the series started. But Doug, anything you want to add before we get into a lot of amazing playoff action?
Yeah, the first thing I'll add is that this is it reminds me as I watch these games, and I have no rooting interest, that I miss caring. It's been a long time since I've given the slightest fornication about the Stanley Cup playoffs. And the last time the Ducks won a playoff game was 2017. That's a long time ago now. And just watching them. And what I miss is not necessarily caring so much as everything that goes into it. Watching the games, leaning forward, cringing with every zone entry by the opponent, celebrating every zone hold by your team, and then the power plays, the highs and lows, but also the hatred that goes with it. You can see how passionate the teams and the players are, and the fans, how much they hate the heroes for each team that they're playing, and the guys that come up, and you just can't stop all of a sudden, and how visceral that hatred is. I miss all of that. I hope to see it again in the near future, but it'll at least be another year for me. That's why I have, if you're watching the YouTube channel, the golf course is the background, because that's where my team is right now, resting up and playing some golf.
Well, I can appreciate everything you just said, but as you well know, there's another side of it, and I just experienced it tonight, where I'm not happy and feel like I want to break something. So there's that side of it as well. You're not experiencing that. You're not.
No, but I do miss that. I miss that.
Well, I don't miss it right now.
That's part
I can tell
of it.
you that. Yeah.
But trust me. It's
trust me. I'm
the yin and the yang.
Right
I understand, but you only get that pissed if you care that much. And I hate losing more than I hate winning.
Yeah, I'm really
I hate losing more than I love winning. So I get it, but it's a luxury to be this pissed off. I'll say that. I get it. You just see your team lose game 4 in overtime, game you thought you had won. But it's been watching all the different series and seeing, especially Montreal and Washington, and seeing the passion on the ice. getting back to something we don't see in regular season hockey anymore is scrums after the whistle, and just a lot of pushing and shoving, and seeing the referees letting things go, like guys punching people while they're being held by referees. And then they're just like, all right, break it up. In the regular season, that's a potential suspension. Now it's just like a good off or a good skirmish after a whistle. So it's fun to watch. I just wish I had a rooting interest, somebody to care for. We haven't done the girlfriend team here in a long time, and that never really carried much weight anyway. But it is fun to sit back and watch just to see the chaos. But I just as I'm watching this first week, I was just like, man, I miss having a rooting interest in this and watching your team and going to games and celebrating and dying with every game.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun when they win, but when they lose, especially how they lose, it can make you question why you even do this. But let's get into it.
With that note, I recommend everybody tune into the next episode of Locked On LA Kings, where Eddie will vent his spleen for 30 minutes.
Let us start with the series that started it all off, and that was the St. Louis Blues taking on the Winnipeg Jets, top seed in the West, taking on the 8th seed. And the Jets, first-time division champs, first-time President's Trophy champs, but they've also been perennial underachievers in the playoffs. 3 of the last 4 years out in the first round. Their goalie, Connor Hellebuck, who's going to win his 3rd Vezina Trophy, maybe even a Hart Trophy, 2-8 in his career in the postseason. Meanwhile, the Blues looking to use the same formula they used to win the Cup 6 years ago, make an in-season coaching change, get hot late, and try and go from there. And their goalie, Jordan Bennington's never won a Vezina, but he has won the Stanley Cup, and he bested Connor Hellebuck with Team USA in the Four Nations face-off. I should say, Jordan Bennington with Canada bested Connor Hellebuck, Team USA in the Four Nations face-off. So you got that going in. Some injuries going into this series for Winnipeg. No Nikolai Ehlers or Gabe Vilardi, a pair of top 6 forwards. And for St. Louis, no Dylan Holloway, their second leading scorer, goal scorer, and 3rd leading points producer during the regular season. As for game 1, we had the traditional whiteout in Winnipeg, which is always awesome. Although, as you have pointed out before, it's a little odd because the team is not wearing white as well. But as the game in this one, Blues opened up the scoring with a power play goal, took a 1-0 lead. Winnipeg responded with a power play goal of their own. Jets would then take a 2-1 lead. St. Louis answering with a goal in the final period. We would be tied 2-2. Blues get their second power play goal of the game, take a 3-2 lead with the only goal of the second period. Third period, goals for Winnipeg, including an empty netter to seal it. In the end, Jets get a 5-3 win to take game 1 in the series. Goalie Connor Hellebuck in the win, 3 goals allowed on 17 shots. Jordan Bennington in the loss, 4 goals allowed on 25 shots. Top line for the Jets coming through, Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, and Alex Iafallo, who's only playing on the top line because of the Gabe Vilardi injury. He scored to tie it. Scheifele had a goal and 2 assists, including the primary assist on the game-winning goal to Kyle Connor, who had a goal and 2 assists as well. St. Louis 2 for 3 on the power play, but not enough in this one. Again, Winnipeg wins it 5-3 to take game 1 of the series.
Yeah, and I'm just going to give a real quick note here, and then we will talk about the series as a whole when we get to the end of it here. But Robert Thomas scored the first goal of these playoffs. You mentioned this was the first game of the playoff schedule. He got the first goal, and he now leads the entire league in scoring since the Four Nations face-off. He has 40 points in 26 games, the highest total of anybody in the league over that span.
Game number 2, Winnipeg would grab an early 1-0 lead, but Blues respond with a power play goal to tie it at 1-1. We had no goals in the second and the third. Kyle Connor gets the only goal of the period. Second straight game, he gets a game-winning goal. Jets win at 2-1 to take a 2-0 series lead. Connor Hellebuck, 1 goal on 22 shots in the win. Jordan Bennington, 2 goals on 22 shots in the loss. And once again, the Jets' top line comes through. Mark Scheifele had the other goal in addition to Kyle Connor.
Kyle Connor, the 4th player in the past 20 years to record the game-winning goal in consecutive games to open the playoffs. The others, Chris Kreider, Nathan McKinnon, Nick Lidstrom, in the past 20 years to do that. And Jimmy Snuggerud, the 2nd player in these playoffs. So a little bit of a spoiler alert as we're kind of going out of order chronologically, but 2nd player of these playoffs to score a playoff goal. Now stick with me, Eddie. It gets a little complicated here, but it's a cool stat, I thought, or I wouldn't have brought it up. 2nd player in these playoffs to score a playoff goal in a game where the opposing coach played in the NHL playoffs with his dad. So Jimmy Snuggerud's dad, Dave, was teammate of Winnipeg Jets head coach Scott Arniel back on the 1990 Sabres. And Ottawa's Ridley Gregg's dad, Mark, was a teammate of Maple Leafs coach Craig Berube with the 99 and 2000 Flyers. So we are now at an age where our friends have kids. And I can only imagine coaching an NHL team in the playoffs and seeing one of your former teammates' kids that you remember maybe being born and skating around the rink with you as a kid, scoring to a goal against you in the playoffs and just looking out and being like, well, good for you, kid, but damn it. So I thought that was pretty cool that the connections, the family connections that these teams have.
All right, so Winnipeg wins both games on home ice. To start it off, we head to St. Louis for game 3, and the Blues would score 3 goals in the first period to grab a 3-0 lead, one of them on the power play. No goals in the second. In the third, Winnipeg would score, but then the Blues scored 3 more goals, one of them a power play goal. Winnipeg scored with the man advantage, but the Blues closed it out with a third period power play goal, and they roll to a 7-2 victory. Jordan Bennington, 2 goals allowed on 19 shots in the win. Connor Hellebuyck allowed 6 goals on 25 shots before being pulled in the third period. For the Blues, Pavel Buchnevich had a hat trick. He also had an assist for a 4-point game, and Cam Fowler had a 5-point night with a goal and 4 assists, the most points by a Blues defenseman in a playoff game ever. This was also the first playoff win as Blues head coach for Jim Montgomery, and St. Louis with 6 power play goals in the first 3 games of the series.
Yeah, Pavel Buchnevich, you mentioned his hat trick, but he had 2 goals in the first 3 minutes and 11 seconds of the game, which is the 7th fastest 2 goals from the start of a playoff game in NHL history. The last player that scored 2 goals quicker than that at the start of a game was Peter Nedved in game 1 of the 1996 conference finals. He did it in 3 minutes and 4 seconds. And Cam Fowler, you mentioned the first Blues defenseman with 5 points in a playoff game. He's only the 8th NHL defenseman to do it, period, to have a 5 or more point game in a playoff game. And the only other active player that has done it is Cale Makar. So Cam Fowler, a great pre-trade deadline acquisition by the St. Louis Blues.
On to game 4, where the Jets would open the scoring, taking a 1-0 lead, but the Blues respond with a goal just 13 seconds left in the period, and we were tied 1-1 after 1 second period belonged to the home team. St. Louis scoring 3 straight goals. That resulted in Winnipeg goalie Connor Hellebuyck being pulled for the second straight game. St. Louis would add the final goal of the third period for a convincing 5-1 win. They even the series at 2-2. Home team has won every game so far in the series. Jordan Bennington allowed 1 goal on 19 shots. Connor Hellebuyck, 5 goals on 18 shots before getting pulled. Eric Comrie allowed no goals on 6 shots. For Hellebuyck, he's allowed 15 goals in 4 games, 11 of them in games 3 and 4 in St. Louis. His save percentage to the first 4 games is at .817. Only Stuart Skinner and Charlie Lindgren are worse right now amongst playoff goalies. So far, through 4 games, Pavel Buchnevich leads the Blues with 3 goals and Cam Fowler with 8 points. Kyle Connor leads the Jets with 3 goals and 5 points. But again, the series is tied at 2-2 with the home team winning every game so far.
And Cam Fowler is the 4th defenseman in the previous 30 years to have at least 8 points through a team's first 4 games of a postseason. Cale Makar did it twice, Paul Martin once, and Al McInnes once within the last 30 years. So he's off to a very nice start and a historically good start as a defenseman offensively. And you mentioned the leading scorer for the Jets is Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele. Both of them have 5 points. Cam Fowler had that in 1 game. They have that in this series. Nobody else has more than 2 points for the Jets. So obviously depth scoring, a big issue for them through the first 4 games. And as we will talk about throughout this first period, when a best of 7 series is tied 2-2, the winner of game 5 wins 79% of the time. So about 4 out of every 5 series that are tied 2-2, the winner of game 5 goes on to win that series. So we will see who wins game 5 in this series. It has not been a good 2 games for Connor Hellebuyck, but he played very well on home ice, well enough to win both games. Great in game 2. I'm not concerned yet, but obviously it's not a great look when he gets pulled in back-to-back games. But he is the the best goalie in the league and has been for a couple of years. So on home ice with a couple of days to clear your mind, I trust him to try and figure it out and not be as bad. He may not be great, but he's not going to be this bad on home ice, I don't think.
Well, he's the best regular season goalie in the NHL. He's not the best postseason goalie in the NHL. And
no, there's no doubt. I told you and Chris Kohler, he's the Bruce Boudreau of goalies. He'll get you there, but he'll get you to the playoffs, but you may want to go with somebody else once you get there. They're not gonna pull him, obviously.
No,
Comrie's not going to get a start.
No, he's not.
But even if he gets bombed in game 3, you ride. You can't pull a Vezina Trophy winner. But
no, you won't. It's him or nothing. No, it's obviously
it's been a bad 2 games, and he has not had a lot of playoff history success. But I'm not ready to throw in the towel on him yet and say he's cooked. This series is over. As you mentioned, the home team has won all 4 games. It's not the only series that has happened. They still have home ice advantage. Let's see what happens in game 5. Fresh start.
Yeah, I disagree with you. If it was me, I would be concerned about Connor Hellebuck. But as you said, what does that mean? I mean, he's going to play. You're going to live and die with him. So It's not like there's a decision to be made. There's no decision to be made. But I would be concerned if I was the Winnipeg Jets.
Well, I mean, now that it's tied 2-2, and we've seen, recency bias, the last 2 games are obviously the ones most fresh in our minds. Do you still think the Jets win this series, or do you think the Blues are going on to win it?
It's a good question. I think the Blues are going to win it.
And I still think the Jets win it. So let's see what happens. At least I'm hoping for my bracket's sake. I know our friend Jeff Ponder, who happy belated birthday to him. It was yesterday. He turned 40. And hopefully for him, the Blues advance.
Next series, Avalanche at Stars, the 2 versus 3 matchup in the Central. This was the second series to get underway. And about a month ago, this looked like it might be the best opening series of the Stanley Cup playoffs, but the Stars ended the season on a season-high 7-game losing skid. They lost their leading scorer, Jason Robertson, in the regular season finale. And star defenseman Miro Heiskanen not ready to play in this first round, at least to start. For the Avs, they did a complete makeover on the fly. They, in season, traded for 2 different goalies and made some big additions at the trade deadline. And then also a subplot in this one, of course, Mikko Rantanen back against his old team, traded from Colorado to Carolina, then to Dallas in this one. Opening game, scoreless opening period. Second period, the Avs would score a couple of goals with a little puck luck. The first goal was kicked in. It was a distinct kicking motion, but it was not deliberate. So upon review, the goal was called a goal, correctly so, but it was a very unusual goal. And then the other goal goes off of the Stars defender and then knuckled in past Jake Ottinger. 2-0 Colorado. In the third period, Dallas made it 2-1, but the Avs respond to make it 3-1. Colorado tacking on a couple of late goals in the empty net. 5-1 would be the final. Colorado with the win. For Dallas, their 8th consecutive Game 1 playoff loss. And they also extend their losing skid from the regular season to 8 in a row. In the win, Mackenzie Blackwood had 1 goal allowed on 24 shots. Jake Ottinger allowed 4 goals on 24 shots in the loss. Nathan McKinnon, 2 goals and an assist. For Mikko Rantanen, no points. 3 shots on goal. He was a -2. And Avalanche captain Gabriel Landeskog did not play in this game. He did play a couple of games in the AHL, tried to come back. So we will keep that a note on Gabriel Landeskog as we go forward in the series.
Well, I want to ask you a question before I give my note here. Actually, let me give the note while it's fresh in our mind, and then I'll ask you. Nathan McKinnon and Charlie Coyle, they scored 11 seconds apart in this game. It's the 3rd fastest pair of playoff goals in franchise history. Nazem Kadri and JT Compher scored 10 seconds apart in 2020. And a couple of Eddie's favorites, Adam Foote and Adam Deadmarsh, scoring 7 seconds apart back in 1996. My question for you is, we've discussed on the show, because as I mentioned at the top, we've been doing this for 19 years. I think we've discussed just about everything that could happen in the world of hockey in that time. And one of the things we've talked about is goals that are kicked in or redirected by feet. And I think we've both said at the past that they should make the rule very clear that if you kick it in, accidental or not, it should not count. It should be a very clear goal so that we don't have this, what's a distinct kicking motion BS. Would that rule have applied in this case? Because obviously the player's falling down. He doesn't even know the puck is there. His foot just hit it. There's nothing to be done. But that was, as you said, a kicking motion, accidental or not. So would your rule, and both our rules in the past, have applied here and waved this off?
Yes.
And
I
are
mean,
you fine
it's
with
black and white. It's black and white. If it goes off your skate and you've directed it in any way to go into the net, then it's no goal. But under the current rules, they got the call correct.
No, 100%. 100% it was a clean goal currently. But I'm just making sure that we're okay with that. And I think we both agree that any goal that goes off your foot, because you can't really just, if it's redirecting, you can't use your skates as like a bumper to redirect the puck. That's kind of a distinct kicking motion in the sense of, like a soccer kick is kind of just repositioning the, but anyway, I was just wondering as I watched that, it was a good goal. It was, the thing that was amazing is not only did he kick it, but it just fluttered over the goalie. It wasn't like he kicked it and the thing went flying. It was just enough to get over the goalie, but then drop in under the crossbar and into the net. It was a wild goal, not Minnesota Wild, not North Stars, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that was one of those goals where real time you had no idea what happened. Like there's no way to figure out what happened. And even upon it was one of those things. That's why replay is so important for a sport like hockey. Even when you watched it again, you were like, wow, I got to see that again, So
right. Did that go off his foot?
Yeah. As far as game 2, first period, two teams exchanged power play goals. It was tied at 1-1. Early in the second, Dallas took a 2-1 lead, but the Avs responded with a pair of goals, led 3-2 going into the third. In the third, Dallas would tie it up at 3 apiece. Mikko Rantanen, though, took a penalty in the final minutes of regulation, so the Avs would have a power play late in regulation and in overtime, but they could not score. And eventually it would be Colin Blackwell with the overtime game winner, put the shot on net. And then there were 2 defenders on him, and they kind of, after he shot it, just kind of lost him, and he followed up his own shot and put it in. And that was your game winner, 4-3. Dallas with the win to even up the series at a game apiece. Jay Gottinger in the victory, 3 goals allowed on 37 shots. In the loss, Mackenzie Blackwood allowed 4 goals on 39 shots, and Mikko Rantanen, no points in this one. He was a -1. Gabriel Landeskog took the pregame skate in this one, but again, did not play.
No, and it's not a surprise that they would want to, take it easy with him, and 2, make his playoff debut, his return to the ice on home ice, which is game 3. So when I saw him scratched for game 1, I thought he'd play in game 1. And when he didn't, I said, okay, they're going to hold him for game 3. But Colin Blackwell did not play in game 1. Speaking of healthy scratches, he gets inserted into the lineup for this one. As Stars coach Pete DeBoer said, he thought the team needed a shot of energy. What a decision. And that's another thing in the playoffs. When you see that regular season game, okay, it's a game 1 of 82. I don't really care too much what players come in and out of the lineup on the bottom, the healthy scratches that draw in on a given night. But in the playoffs, you examine every decision because it could be something like this. A guy that wasn't in the game in game 1 gets to play in game 2 and scores the overtime game winner to send his team into the game 3 tied up 1-1. Amazing moment for him. And Pete DeBoer is just like, boy, am I glad I called that guy.
Yeah, and there are a couple of overtime heroes as the week goes along that you're like, you never know who's going to be an overtime hero, like 100%. Colin Blackwell.
Yeah.
Game number 3 was in Colorado. Avs scored the opening goal to take a 1-0 lead. We had no goals in the second period. In the third, Dallas would score on the power play to tie it at 1-1. Colorado would get 4 minutes of power play time after a double minor on Mason Marchment. And that would cover the last part of the third and 3 minutes in the start of overtime. Again, the Avs could not take advantage. Second straight game, Dallas wins it in overtime. Tyler Seguin with the OT game winner. 2-1, Dallas gets the win and now leads the series 2-1 after back-to-back overtime victories. Jay Gottinger in the win, 1 goal allowed on 28 shots. In the loss, Mackenzie Blackwood allowed 2 goals on 28 shots. Mikko Rantanen did have an assist in this victory. And Gabriel Landeskog did return 3 years away from the game, played 13 minutes, 16 seconds, no points, no shots on goal. But he's now officially the first player ever to return to the ice after suffering the knee injury that he had. No one had ever been able to return to play in an NHL game until he did it.
Yeah, it's a great story to see him return. And this is not obviously circumvention. He was cap circumvention. They're well over the cap if he's playing in the regular season, but in the playoffs, the salary cap doesn't matter. And there's no doubt he was seriously injured. As you mentioned, he's been out of the game for 3 years. Tyler Seguin, that's his first overtime playoff goal in over 13 years. And that's the third longest gap between overtime playoff goals in NHL history. The only two that had a longer gap, Ray Whitney went over 16 years in between goals, almost 17, and Teemu Selanne went over 14 years. Stars winning consecutive overtime games for the first time in franchise history. Last team to do that was just last year when the Rangers did it in the conference final against the Panthers. And Jamie Benn with his 28th career playoff goal in this game, tying Dino Ciccarelli and Neil Broughton for fourth most in North Stars playoff history. The most, he's got a long way to go, 58 by Mike Modano. So good luck catching that. But a couple of great names, Neil Broughton and Dino Ciccarelli.
All right, let's move on to game number 4, where Colorado would score a pair of goals in the first period, grab a 2-0 lead. Second period, the lone goal was scored by Avalanche captain Gabriel Landeskog to make it 3-0. Third period, Dallas head coach Pete DeBoer pulled goalie Jake Ottinger and started Casey DeSmith. For the third, it didn't change things. The only goal scored was by Colorado, who skates off with a relatively easy 4-0 win to even the series at 2-2, as both teams got the split in each other's buildings. Mackenzie Blackwood allowed 1 goal on 24 shots in the win, and the lost Jake Ottinger allowed 4 goals on 24 shots. And for Gabriel Landeskog, 1,036 days between goals for him, almost 3 years. His last game that he played in was in the Stanley Cup Finals. I didn't get the exact date of his last goal, but obviously continuing the amazing comeback story by not only playing, but getting a goal and playing on their second line. So he's actually playing significant minutes. Yep. Nathan MacKinnon, as far as the series again, tied 2-2 as far as leaders so far. Nathan MacKinnon leads Colorado with 3 goals and 4 points. Tyler Seguin leads Dallas with 2 goals, and Thomas Harley leads him in points with 3. Again, tied 2-2. It is now a best of 3, just like St. Louis and Winnipeg.
I'm not sure if they changed a goal after your notes, but Nathan MacKinnon, 4 goals to lead his team and 5 points, and 3 of them are on the power play. So he is red hot. Nobody else has a power play goal for Colorado. He has 3, and that is as many as the entire Stars team so far. Mackenzie Blackwood with the Colorado's first playoff shutout since Darcy Kemper back in Game 2 of the 2022 Stanley Cup Final, a 7-0 win over the Lightning. So a couple of great moments there. Now, the one player that's been quiet, that I've been surprised has been quiet so far, is Marty Necas. He was a great addition when they first traded Mikko Rantanen. Well, when they traded Mikko Rantanen, his first trade. He only has 1 point, and it's an assist through 4 games. I thought he would be a little bit more impactful offensively, though it has not held them back. They're getting more contributions from some players I didn't think would have great series. Jack Drury, one of them. I believe it's his uncle, Chris, that is a former NHL player. Brock Nelson having a decent series as well. And Cale Makar only 2 assists so far. So the good news for Dallas is they're tied in the series. The bad news is they've had to fight like hell to win their 2 games. And they've had a quiet Cale Makar, a quiet Marty Necas. If those guys wake up, Nathan MacKinnon is already awake, and Sam Girard is already awake, and Gabe Landeskog is now back. It's a lot of weapons to hold back. So Dallas, we'll see what they can do in Game 5. But as I mentioned, 2-2 series, going back to Dallas for Game 5, 79% win percentage for the team that wins Game 5 in these scenarios.
Let's move on to our next series. The Devils taking on the Hurricanes. This was a 2-3 matchup out of the Metro. Carolina with home ice advantage. We've known about this matchup for months, so no real drama as far as these two teams getting to where they are, although Carolina did come into the playoffs having lost 7 of 8, but they did rest players as well. And, of course, New Jersey going into the postseason without their big star, Jack Hughes, unfortunately. Opening game in this one, in Carolina would score the first goal of the series and led 1-0 after 1. The Canes would tack on 2 more goals in the third and take a 3-1 lead before New Jersey finally scored to make it 3-1. Carolina capped the scoring with an empty net goal and skate off with a 4-1 victory. Frederick Anderson allowed 1 goal on 24 shots in the win. Jacob Markstrom allowed 3 goals on 44 shots in the loss. Logan Stankoven, remember, he was the guy that was acquired in the Mikko Rantanen trade, had 2 goals in this one. For New Jersey, Brendan Dillon and Cody Glass both left with injuries and did not return.
Yeah, well, the way they got injured was pretty amazing. The swinging stick that takes out his own player as he tries to, from the goalie, as he tries to give somebody a love tap in front of the net and injures his own player. So that was brutal to see. This one, Sheldon Keefe said it. They lost in the first period. They didn't show up ready to play. The Devils, Sheldon Keefe, the Devils head coach, and Jacob Slavin, by the way, the second player in franchise history, that's Hurricanes and Whalers, with 30 career assists in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He got his 30th here. The only other one that has that is Sebastian Aho, his teammate.
On to game number 2, and no Luke Hughes or Brendan Dillon due to injuries in this one for New Jersey. Devils, though, would get the lone goal of the opening period, take a 1-0 lead. Second period, Carolina scored twice, including a shorthanded goal to take a 2-1 lead in the third. The Canes would finish it off with an empty netter for a 3-1 win. Carolina with the 2-0 series lead. Frederick Anderson allowed 1 goal on 26 shots in the win. Jacob Markstrom 2 goals on 27 shots in the loss. And the game-winning goal came shorthanded. Jordan Martinook with that goal and an assist. The win moved Carolina to 11-0 when playing for a chance to take a 2-0 series lead. And that dates back to their Stanley Cup run in 2006.
That's not bad. That's not bad. You win game 1, you're going to win game 2 if you're a Carolina Hurricane. You mentioned the shorthanded goal. The Devils have no power play goals in this series. So when the Devils are on the power play, the only team that has scored is the Carolina Hurricanes. And as you mentioned, it was the game winner here. It's the only player, that's his second shorthanded goal in franchise history, or for Jordan Martinook. And the only other player that has more than 1 shorthanded goal in the postseason is Sebastian Aho. Freddie Anderson, 25 saves, 5th active goalie to reach 40 career playoff wins. And I'm putting you on the spot, Eddie. Which other active goalies have 40 or more career playoff wins?
How many of them are there?
There are 5 total, and Frederick Anderson is the 5th.
Well, Marc-Andre Fleury.
That's correct.
Is 1. Jonathan Quick.
That's 2.
Is 1. Those are right off the top of my head.
Both have won Stanley Cups.
Andre Vasilevsky.
Yes.
And
the goalie he's playing,
Sergei Bobrovsky.
There you go. Well done.
Yeah,
that's it.
Nothing.
Freddie Anderson now joining that group with 40 playoff victories or more.
Not bad.
And the only other thing, as you mentioned, that's an amazing thing. They're the third franchise to open with a 2-0 series lead 5 straight years. Blackhawks have done it, Canadiens have done it, and now the Hurricanes. In each of the first 5 first-round series, past 5 years, the Hurricanes have gone up 2-0.
On to game number 3, as the series would shift to New Jersey. Again, no Luke Hughes or Brendan Dillon. Jonas Siegenthaler, though, did return to the lineup for New Jersey. First game for him since February the 4th. A good start for the home team with a goal in the first period and the opening goal of the third period as well for a 2-0 lead. But Carolina would respond with 2 goals of their own in the third, and we would be tied at 2-2 heading to overtime after a scoreless first overtime period. This one decided in the second overtime, our first multi-overtime game of the postseason. And we talk about those heroes, Devils defensemen. I thought it was always Simon Nemec, but apparently when you score in overtime in the playoffs, you're now Simone Nemec. He scores, makes a nice move around a defender, and then lets a shot go. It went right under the right armpit of Frederick Anderson to win it. First career playoff goal for him. Overtime game winner, and the Devils take it 3-2. Carolina still leads the series 2-1, but a big win for New Jersey. In the win, Jacob Markstrom had allowed 2 goals on 27 shots, and the loss, Frederick Anderson allowed 3 goals on 37 shots.
And the home team has won every game of this series so far. And you mentioned Simone Nemec becoming the second youngest defenseman in NHL history to score an overtime goal in the playoffs. The only one that has done it younger, Andre Zuzin, back in 1998. Eddie loves those random names.
Yes, I do.
He's also the youngest player in franchise history to score an overtime goal, eclipsing Adam Henrique, who was 22 years old when he did it back in 2012. He's also the third defenseman to score in double overtime of the past 10 years. Ivan Provorov back in 2020 and Victor Hedman also in 2020 also pulled that off. So big win for the Devils. You mentioned all the guys that they're without. To get that win on home ice, give them some hope. Big win for them and a big moment for Simone Nemec.
And on to game number 4, where Carolina came out strong. 2 first-period goals to take a 2-0 lead. Canes then made it 3-0 with a power play goal. New Jersey did come back with a pair of goals to cut it to 3-2. Second period, we also saw goalie Frederik Andersen get run into by Timo Meier. Andersen was bent backwards, had to leave the game with an injury, and didn't return. They called a 5-minute major on the ice so they could review it, and then they went from 5-minute major to no penalty, which I thought was I didn't really understand that. In the third,
didn't really understand that. That's putting it as an understatement. Your text to me was a little bit more heated.
Yeah, I just thought it was bullcrap. But anyway, in the third, Carolina scored the final 2 goals, one of them into an empty net. That was from Andrei Svechnikov to complete a hat trick as Carolina skates off with a 5-2 win and leads the series 3-1. In the win, Frederik Andersen allowed 1 goal on 7 shots. And then in relief, Pyotr Kochetkov came in and allowed 1 goal on 15 shots. In the loss, Jacob Markstrom, 4 goals allowed on 29 shots. So far in the series, Andrei Svechnikov leads Carolina with 4 goals. He and Sebastian Aho lead the team in points with 5. Nico Hischier leads the Devils with 3 goals. He and Jesper Bratt have 3 points as well.
As does Timo Meier. Let's not short him his 3 points there. But you mentioned Andrei Svechnikov. What a game for him. The 5th player in league history to count for each of an NHL franchise's first 2 playoff hat tricks. So he's the only player in franchise history to have a playoff hat trick. And he's got both of them. The only other players that have done that, Wayne Gretzky, of course, the Oilers had the first 3 Oilers playoff hat tricks. And Daniel Alfredson with the Senators. Then you had Doug Bentley with the Blackhawks, Paul Reinhart with the Flames, all had 2 as well. But Svechnikov, his 2nd career playoff hat trick, and he became the 4th player in franchise history to record a goal in the opening minute of a playoff game. Got off to a hot start there. Warren Fogle, Eric Cole, Matt Cullen also did that trick. But on defense, we mentioned Jacob Slavin in game 1. In this one, he passes Dave Babbage for the most playoff goals by a defenseman in franchise history. So him contributing as well, having a great series. But that play, and this is one of the ones that I thought, boy, I miss playoff hockey for this reason. The play that injured Freddie Andersen, as you mentioned, was originally called a penalty, and then they wave it off. And meanwhile, the goalie's being helped off the ice, our starting goalie in the playoffs. I would have been absolutely, you're so incensed if you're a Hurricanes fan watching that, because he wasn't pushed into the goalie. He wasn't knocked into the goalie. He wasn't out of control. He skated right into him and injured the guy. How is that not a penalty?
And the goalie wasn't like half out of the crease. He was deep in the blue ice.
Right. You cannot go into the crease, contact a goalie multiple times of your own free will, and injure the guy and have no penalty. That's ridiculous. If I could do that, I'm going to skate right down there and take their goalie out. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, how can you let this? How is that no penalty? I would have been apoplectic if I was on the bench for Carolina. If I was Rod Brindamore, I would have demanded some answers and thrown sticks on the ice until they came over and addressed me and said, "What the hell's going on?" Because that makes no sense.
I mean, he was pissed, and they did come over and talk to him briefly, but I mean, yeah, I don't get it. I was completely.
Yeah, I would tell him, then you better swallow your effing whistle when we run their goalie and knock him out, because that's coming and that's on you. You can't just let a guy skate into a goalie's crease while he's just standing there, but while he's trying to make a save. So he's in a susceptible position and run the guy and injure him. You can't do that. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, the Carolina Hurricanes with a 3-1 series lead, they are 1 win away from advancing out of the first round of the playoffs for an 8th straight time. Let's move over to the Senators at the Maple Leafs. Battle of Ontario for the first time in 21 years in the postseason. Ottawa won the season series, 3-0. Would that factor at all into this? Well, let's start with game one, of course, in Toronto, where the Leafs scored the first 2 goals of the game to take a 2-0 lead in their game before Ottawa scored. So 2-1 Toronto after one. Second period, 2 more goals for the Leafs, both on the power play. Senators would open up the third period with a goal, but Toronto scored the final 2, another power play goal, and they cruised to a 6-2 victory. Anthony Stolhand is in net for the Leafs, 2 goals allowed on 33 shots. In the loss for Ottawa, Linus Ullmark allowed 6 goals on 24 shots. Mitch Marner with a 3-point game for Toronto, goal and 2 assists, and the Maple Leafs 3 power play goals in this victory. And this is the number 2 seed in the East against the 7th seed.
Yeah, and you mentioned Mitch Marner with a 3-point game. That's his 5th 3-point playoff game, which gives him sole possession of 3rd most in Maple Leafs history, behind Doug Gilmour and Darryl Sittler. By the way, 3 points in that game. Spoiler alert for the Senators. Their leading scorer through 4 games has 3 points. So Mitch Marner has that in 1 game. And it was the Maple Leafs recording 3 power play goals for the first time in a playoff game for the first time since 1999. They may have been in the Western Conference back then. I'm not sure. But a hell of a game for Toronto. And you mentioned the season series. I thought that would play a factor. I thought that would give Ottawa an advantage. It seemed to be a motivating factor for Toronto as they came out to prove a point and ran the Senators out of the building. Great atmosphere for this one, though. The Battle of Ontario, when you get regional rivalries like this is one of 2 series that has this going on of just close rivals that hate each other. And this was good stuff.
As far as game number 2, second straight game, Toronto would take a 2-0 lead in the opening period. One of their goals was another power play goal. However, Ottawa would respond with a power play goal of their own in the second, and then they tie it up at even strength as we go into the third. Eventually, this game goes overtime, and Max Domi with a wrist shot off the post and in gives the Leafs the victory and a 2-0 series lead. First time since 2002. The Leafs led a playoff series by a score of by 2-0.
And a lot of people, I think, watching this game were surprised Max Domi is still in the league. He's a guy that you might remember from the Coyotes and kind of bouncing around, but he's on the Leafs and making a big moment here. And that was his first career playoff overtime goal. He was 9 years old when his dad, Ty Domi, scored the game-winning goal for the Maple Leafs in Game 5 of the 2004 Conference Finals against Ottawa. So Max and Ty Domi became, amazingly, this is how incestuous hockey is. They're the 5th father-son duo in NHL history to record a game-winning goal in the playoffs for the same team.
Oh, wow.
What are the odds of that? And yet it's the 5th time? I thought, okay, in any history? No, for the same team. They're the only ones, by the way, to do it against the same franchise. So for the same team against the same team, Max and Ty Domi. By the way, I mentioned the 5th. Let's give some of the others for people that love hockey history. Butch and Pierre Bouchard, Ken Hodge Sr. and Ken Hodge Jr., Greg and Ryan Malone, and Peter and Paul Stasny. I don't know if Mary had any, but Peter and Paul both did. Morgan Riley getting his 13th career playoff goal, by the way, surpassing Borje Salming and tying Ian Turnbull for the most in Maple Leafs history among defensemen. He also became the first defenseman in Maple Leafs history to score in each of the franchise's first 2 games of a postseason. So a great start for Morgan Riley and a great moment for Max and Ty Domi.
And I did want to mention Anthony Stolarz allowed 2 goals on 28 shots in the win. Linus Ullmark, 3 goals on 21 shots in the loss. The Leafs are 10-0 in playoff series in which they've won the first 2 games at home. Game 3, as the series would shift to Ottawa. First time in 8 years, Sens fans got to see a home playoff game. Scoreless opening period, but Ottawa would get the lead for the first time in the series on a power play goal. But the Leafs would answer back with their own power play goal. We were tied at 1 after 2. Third period, Toronto would take a 2-1 lead, but Ottawa answered. And for the second straight game, we would have overtime. Like game 2, Toronto gets the sudden death win. This time it was defenseman Simone Benoit scoring the game winner as Toronto wins it 3-2 and takes a commanding 3-0 series lead. Anthony Stolarz allowed 2 goals on 20 shots in the win. Linus Ullmark, 3 goals on 20 shots in the loss. And Mitch Marner, a 2-assist game. And so time to pull out that stat that most hockey fans know, but only 4 teams in NHL history have rallied down 3-0 to win a playoff series. The Leafs actually did it in 1942 in the Stanley Cup final, the only team to ever do it in a Stanley Cup final.
Is your name Simone? Are you an NHL defenseman? Well, then you are going to score an overtime game-winning goal in the playoffs, says Simone Nemec, and now Simone Benoit with the game-winning goal. The third I would say of the overtime goals we've recapped so far, the only person that anybody would suspect would be Tyler Seguin. The other 3 are all very much, who? What happened? I didn't even know he was on the ice. Mitch Marner, by the way, getting an assist. He ties Red Kelly for 9th most playoff points in Maple Leafs history. And that is his 10th multi-assist game in the postseason, which moves him past Daryl Sittler and Borje Salming for 2nd most in franchise history. List is topped by Doug Gilmour, which he will probably not catch. But Mitch Marner, with 7 points through the series so far, is a free agent this summer. That man is going to get a bag full of money from somebody, and it ain't the Leafs.
That is true. All right, game number 4, a must-win for Ottawa, as Toronto was looking to be the first team to advance into round 2. Home team, though, came out strong with their backs up against the wall. 2 first-period goals. Toronto did score with less than a minute to go in the opening period, but the Senators had a 2-1 lead after 1. Second period, the Leafs would get the only goal, and we were tied at 2-2 going into the third. In the third, the Senators scored, but the Leafs responded. We were tied 3-3 going to overtime again. Sudden death overtime. Toronto had a 4-minute power play in overtime after a double minor, but they did not score, and that kept Ottawa alive for defenseman Jake Sanderson to score with a shot just inside the blue line, as he just kept it in the zone and then fired off a shot from some distance. It just floated in past Anthony Stolarz. 4-3, Senators win and stay alive. In the win, Linus Ullmark allowed 3 goals on 34 shots. In the loss, Anthony Stolarz allowed 4 goals on 21 shots. Jake Anderson with the game-winning goal and an assist as well. And for the Sens, first time in the first playoff win since the 2017 Eastern Conference Finals. So obviously a big one for them. So the series is 3-1 Toronto at this point. As far as the leaders in the series, John Tavares leads the Leafs with 3 goals. Mitch Marner, 7 points. Brady Tkachuk leads the Senators with 2 goals. And Tkachuk, Claude Giroux, and Jake Sanderson are tied for the team leading points with 3. So Toronto again, 3-1 series lead. If they don't close it out in game number 5, it will be very interesting to see how this goes. The Leafs are 1-12 now in closeout games during the Matthews-Marner era.
Well, add Nylander in there. It's I get what you're saying though. But and by the way, Matthew Knies also has 3 goals tied with Tavares, and that's the problem for Ottawa, is that the leading goal scorers for Toronto are John Tavares and Matthew Knies. Austin Matthews is going to heat up. He only has 1 goal. William Nylander is going to heat up. He only has 1 goal. Mitch Marner only has 1 goal. He does have 6 assists. So those guys are going to show up and start scoring their goals here eventually. And I don't like the Senators' chances of winning the next 3 straight, but they are still alive. They're still playing for something, and they are controlling their own destiny here. Linus Ullmark has been a big disappointment for them so far. That was the key, was they had the better goalie going into the series. At least that's what I thought. And so far, that has not been the case. Anthony Stolarz has a 2.29 goals against average, a 9.02 save percentage. Linus Ullmark has a 3.44 goals against average and an 8.48 save percentage. So not getting the job done. Now, granted, it's not a one-man show. The team in front of him holds some responsibility as well. But Toronto has looked great. Ottawa has not. And I suspect this will be closed out in pretty short order on home ice by Toronto, because if it does go to Ottawa, as you mentioned, for a game 6, then the pucker starts, and it's the here we go again Leafs. And that's where I think the media does them dirty, as opposed to a team like the Kings, like Dallas. Let's be honest, your Kings, I know you love them. Nobody in the LA media gives the slightest hoot about what the LA Kings are doing in the playoffs right now, because both the Lakers and the Clippers are in the playoffs, and the Dodgers are playing games right now. So that's the focus. That's the first three stories on any given sports day. And then you talk about the Kings. But in Toronto, that's all they talk about is the Maple Leafs. They don't care about the Raptors. They don't care about the Blue Jays. They care about the Maple Leafs first, second, third. So if this goes to a game 6, whether you pay attention or not, it's in the atmosphere of that city is the pressure on them to advance, especially against a regional rival like Ottawa. So it is in their best interest to close this out in game 5, because it'll get very nervous if they go to game 6 and then, God forbid, a game 7. I mean, the pucker will be, you're either making you're making a diamond in there at that point. My goodness, it is just ridiculous, the pressure they'll be under.
All right, let's move on to the Wild at the Golden Knights, a 2 versus 7 matchup. The Pacific Division champs against the number 1 wildcard team. Vegas swept the season series 3-0. However, Kirill Kaprizov only appeared in one of those 3 games. He's now back and ready to roll. Vegas in the playoffs for the 7th time in 8 seasons of existence. Their last 7 postseason, or for I would say the Wild, they have appeared in the postseason the last 7 times, but have yet to escape out of the first round in those 7 times.
They haven't advanced out of the first round in the last 7 years.
That's what I just said. I think
I'm going to look that up.
Please.
I know that's what you said, but that sounds amazing. Let's look it up while you recap game 1.
Let's move on to game 1, where Vegas would score the first goal of the series to take a 1-0 lead. The Minnesota, though, would respond with a first period goal of their own. We were tied at 1 after 1. Second period, Vegas takes a 2-1 lead on a power play goal. And in the third, Vegas would extend their lead to 3-1. Minnesota scores late to make it 3-2, but Vegas then iced it with an empty net goal and skates off with the 4-2 victory. In the win, Aiden Hill allowed 2 goals on 20 shots. In the loss, Philip Gustafsson, 3 goals allowed on 26 shots. Brett Howden, a pair of goals in the win for Vegas. One note for Minnesota, rookie Zeev Boyum made his NHL debut. Former University of Denver star and Hobie Baker finalist. Born in San Diego, I saw. Nice to make your NHL debut in the playoffs. No points for him. About 13 and a half minutes of ice time for Zeev Boyum.
Zeev Boyum, I mean, we can imagine, and that's all we can do because we're never going to be in that position. But making your NHL debut has got to be an amazing moment. Having it be in a playoff game has got to be almost overwhelming. Like the butterflies have got to be through the roof. So for him to not throw up on the bench is quite an accomplishment, in my opinion. You are correct. Your stat is correct. The Minnesota Wild have not won a playoff series since 2015 and have only have 2 playoff series wins since 2003. Eesh.
That's been a while, yeah. Anything to add about game 1?
No, that's it.
All right.
No interesting stats in game 1.
On to game 2. Big opening period for the road team as Minnesota scored 3 first period goals to lead 3-1 after 1. They'd make it 4-0 in the second before Vegas finally got on the board. In the third, Golden Knights would score to make it 4-2, but the Wild would then ice the win with an empty net goal and take a 5-2 victory. In this one, they even the series at 1 apiece. Philip Gustafsson in the win allowed 2 goals on 32 shots. Aiden Hill allowed 4 goals on just 16 shots. And Kirill Kaprizov, 2 goals and an assist. And that assist was a gorgeous saucer pass to Matt Boldy to open up the scoring. Highlight reel assist by Kirill the Thrill. And they are obviously very happy to have him back in their lineup. Missed most of the season due to injury. Before he got hurt, he was a MVP candidate. But nice win for the Wild to get the split in Sin City.
It's not many franchises, but these both, I think, apply because they're young franchises, especially Vegas. But it's not many franchises where you can say the greatest player in franchise history is on the ice. And Kirill Kaprizov is that. He is an amazing player for the Minnesota Wild. Marian Gaborik was a great player. But this is another level of skill that we're seeing. You mentioned that saucer pass. And he became, with his goal and an assist, he became the 3rd Wild player to start a postseason with consecutive multi-point games. John Klingberg and Eric Stahl also did it. And he became the first player in franchise history with 3 career multi-goal playoff games. He tied the uh, Zach Parise and Jared Spurgeon with 2 in that one. But he's the first player to have multiple 3-point games in the franchise in the playoffs. So he's off to a great start. And he and Matt Boldy together are looking like a deadly pair. And as we go into game 3, that would only get furthered.
And in game 3, the series would shift to the Twin Cities. And another good start for the Wild. They scored the first 2 goals in the game. First goal was a power play goal. Vegas did score to cut it to 2-1 after 1. Second period, 2 more goals for Minnesota to make it 4-1. In the third, Vegas would score to cut it to 4-2. But again, Minnesota would score into an empty net to seal it. Second straight game, they win it by a score of 5-2. And they now take a 2-1 series lead over the Pacific Division champions. So first time we've seen so far in the playoffs, the wild card team taking a series lead against a division champion. In the win, Philip Gustafsson allowed 2 goals on 32 shots. Aiden Hill, 4 goals allowed on 21 shots before he got pulled and replaced by Akira Schmid. Kirill Kaprizov, 2 power play goals. And I'm not sure, we talked about the Tkachuk brothers, maybe because of the position he plays, Logan Thompson in Washington. But of all the guys that were kind of hurt and coming back, I don't know if there's anybody that's made a bigger impact on his team than Kirill Kaprizov.
No, and I would say maybe second to that would be Gabe Landeskog because of the emotional impact and also now contributing on the score sheet. But as I said, he's the best player on this team and in franchise history. So getting him back is like the Devils suddenly saying, "Hey, Jack Hughes is ready to go," and is going to be a contributing player. It's just amazing how good he is. This is his 4th career multi-goal game. Second in as many games. You mentioned, or I mentioned it off game 2, but the last player that had consecutive multi-goal games was back in 2023 when Leon Draisaitl did it in the second round, and Mikko Rantanen and Chris Kreider all did it that same year. Kaprizov and Matt Boldy have reached multiple point games in each of the first 3 games. The only other team in the past 30 years that had 2 players with simultaneous multi-point streaks to start a postseason were the Penguins in 2000. And it's not the players you're thinking of. It's Jaromir Jagr, yes, and Jan Hrdina was the other guy that had a 3-game, 3-point streak. So amazing going there. And they're having amazing starts. But the Golden Knights, as you mentioned, the first quote-unquote favorite to be in trouble in this. And when they lost this game, it didn't look good. You kind of could see a little bit of what's going wrong with the Golden Knights. We didn't expect them to be down 2-1, and they're getting outplayed at every facet of the game so far.
And also not looking good, their top line, Jack Eichel, Mark Stone, and Ivan Barbashev, through 3 games, combined 0 points.
Yeah, we'll talk about that afterwards, but that's been a problem, obviously.
All right, on to game 4, a highly suggested win for the Vegas Golden Knights, and they would get the opening goal in this one to take a 1-0 lead. Minnesota, though, would answer, and we'd be tied at 1 after 1. Second period, only Minnesota would get a goal to take a 2-1 lead. Very entertaining third period as the Golden Knights would score twice. The Wild would answer with the final goal in regulation. We would be tied at 3-3 going into overtime, and in OT, Ivan Barbashev puts in a rebound in the crease to end it and give Vegas a 4-3 win. The series tied at 2 games apiece. In the victory, Aiden Hill allowed 3 goals on 32 shots. Philip Gustafsson, 4 goals allowed on 46 shots. We talked about the Vegas top line. Well, Ivan Barbashev gets the game-winning goal in overtime plus an assist. And Mark Stone and Jack Eichel also had an assist. And Stone's assist was one of the more bizarre assists I've ever seen. His teammate, Tomas Hertl, got tied up with Ryan Hartman. They both go to the ice. If you're a Minnesota fan, you would say that Hertl tackled him. But they're both laying on the ice, and Stone shoots it into Hertl's body, and it ricochets off him and goes into the net. And it looked like he meant to do it because it wasn't like he passed it and then Hertl fell down. He was already down on the ice when he passed it to him. But it went in. That was completely bizarre. Crazy goal. As far as the series so far, though, Tomas Hertl leading the Golden Knights with 3 goals and 5 points, and Kirill Kaprizov leading the Wild with 4 goals and 8 points. But again, the series tied at 2-2, each team getting the split in the other team's city.
Yeah, the good news for Minnesota is that the series is tied 2-2, and you've got a best of 3 series now, and I think you've outplayed the Golden Knights through the first 4 games. The bad news is, as you mentioned, the top line may have woken up a little bit there, getting the game-winning goal, but if I'm in Vegas, I bet if I went into a supermarket right now and looked on the side of a carton of milk, you might see Jack Eichel's picture because that guy was everywhere. He was the best player they've ever had in the regular season this past year. And he has 1 point and is a -7. So he is getting absolutely owned at regular strength, even strength. And Shea Theodore, who started the series with an absolutely gorgeous power play assist. They win the faceoff. It comes right back to him. He looks like he's going to shoot. He passes it off to Pavel Dorofeyev, who shoots it into an empty net. And I thought, what a gorgeous power play goal. He hasn't been seen since. He's a -5 at even strength. So we say it all the time, and we certainly didn't cook up this saying, but it's something we repeat all the time. In the playoffs, your best players have to be your best players. Minnesota's best players have done that. Vegas has not. The fact that they're in this series 2-2, they are lucky to be in this series because Minnesota has outplayed them through 3 of the 4 games, in my opinion, and should be up 3-1. But instead, it's a tied series going back to Vegas for Game 5.
All right, up next, we have the Oilers versus the Kings, the 2-3 matchup out of the Pacific. 4th straight year they're meeting in the playoffs. Edmonton's won the last 3. For the Kings, they're starting their 4th goalie in that span, but probably their best to this point in Darcy Kemper. Oilers came in a bit banged up. They would not have their top defenseman, Mattias Ekholm, for the entire series. In game number 1, LA getting off to a great start with 2 first-period goals, one of them on the power play to take a 2-0 lead. They would extend the lead in the second with 2 more goals before Edmonton finally scored in the final seconds of the second. 4-1 LA leads going into the third. In the third, Edmonton made it 4-2. LA countered with a goal to make it 5-2. And then Connor McDavid almost single-handedly brought the Oilers back. Well, he did bring them back. 2 primary assists and then a goal to tie it at 5-5. However, with a minute 28 left, it was minute 28 left. He tied it at 5-5 with his goal. Philip Deneau would score with 42 seconds left, and the Kings would pull out a 6-5 victory. Darcy Kemper allowed 5 goals on 25 shots in the win. Stuart Skinner allowed 6 goals on 30 shots in the loss. Philip Deneau, 2 goals, including the game winner, and Connor McDavid, a goal and 3 assists, but coming up short. The Kings had no power play goals in the entire series last year, 2 in game number 1 in the win.
That's the 4th time in Stanley Cup history that a team has won a game in regulation after blowing a 4-goal lead. The others were the Flames, Game 1 of 2022, the Bruins, Game 2 of 1978's Stanley Cup Final, and Game 1 by the Bruins of the 1972 Stanley Cup Final. So Philip Deneau, you mentioned, with 42 seconds left, reestablishing the Kings' lead. That's the latest go-ahead goal in a playoff game for LA in their history. Previous record was Trevor Lewis, who scored with a minute 21 to play in Game 2 of the 2013 conference semifinals. So I would say, and you tell me, Eddie, because you were there, I would say that Philip Deneau goal saved your heart because it was so quick. You were panicked. You couldn't believe they came back and blew that lead, but then so quickly they took a lead right back, and it was not enough time to blow it again. So it was like, thank goodness, because if that game had gone to overtime, the puckering would have started for the Kings, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, Connor McDavid just taking over and doing Connor McDavid-like things, and they scored their final 2 goals with the goalie pulled. So they pulled the goalie very early, like 3.5 minutes left, maybe even 4.
Well, he wasn't doing much good anyway.
Well, that's true, but it was like, they were on a power play for like the final 4 minutes of the game, and the Kings missed 3 shots at the empty net that would have avoided all the drama. But in the end, all's well that ends well. But you're right. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe we're going overtime. And then you're like, oh, wait a minute, maybe not.
Yep.
But yeah, this is when it was fun for me as a Kings fan. I was enjoying things quite a bit. But yes, getting to go to playoff hockey games is a lot of fun. As for game number 2, LA would open up the scoring once again with a power play goal, grabbed a 1-0 lead. Kings extended it to 3-0 in the second period. Another power play goal as well before the Oilers would get their first goal of the game. It was 3-1 going into the third. Edmonton would score the opening goal of the third period, but the Kings would respond with the final 3 goals, another power play goal in the mix, and they would win this one 6-2 to take a 2-0 series lead. Darcy Kemper allowing 5 goals on 25 shots. Stuart Skinner allowing 5 goals on 28 shots before getting replaced by Calvin Pickard, who would allow a goal on 3 shots. Adrian Kempe with 2 goals. And the Kings, 3 more power play goals. They're now 5 for 10 on the power play in this series. And they did not have a good power play during the regular season, but they picked up Andre Kuzmenko at the deadline and then went to a 5-forward power play setup, which has worked marvelous for them. For Edmonton, they were 0 for 5 on the power play in the series. And in this game, too, no points from Connor McDavid.
Yeah, the loss of Matthias Ekholm is killing the Oilers' penalty kill. They don't know that's such a key part of it. And without him playing that role, they have not figured that out. They're going to have to very quickly. You mentioned Andre Kuzmenko. He has the most points among any player that was acquired at the deadline. Mikko Rantanen is second with 18, but Andre Kuzmenko has 21 points in the 24 games, including the playoffs, since the trade deadline. And that is guys that were acquired on actual trade deadline day, not just before the trade deadline, obviously. LA becoming the 4th team in the past 30 years to score 6 goals in each of their first 2 playoff games. The others were San Jose, Montreal, Florida. Only 2 teams have extended that to 3 games, Chicago back in 85 and Boston in 1977. So let's go to game 3 and see if the LA Kings could score 6 goals for a 3rd straight game.
The series obviously now shifting to Edmonton, and for the first time in the series, the Oilers would score the first goal of the game. They scored the first 2, actually, and it was their first lead of the series it was the first lead of the series that they had.
Yes, correct.
And one of them was a power play goal, which was their first power play goal of the series. However, the Kings did score late, and after one period, Edmonton had a 2-1 lead. Second period, the Kings would score 2 power play goals to take a 3-2 lead. Oilers would tie it up, but the Kings would come right back and lead 4-3 going into the third period. In the third, the Oilers would tie it up on a controversial goal. Evander Kane would kick the puck into the net. Call on the ice was that he kicked it and no goal. However, they said they were going to check it with video review, and then video review overturned the call on the ice. We were tied 3-3. Then Kings head coach Jim Hiller on the same play challenged for goalie interference. The challenge was unsuccessful. It gave the Oilers a power play, and they scored immediately to now take a 5-4 lead. They would add a couple of empty netters and skate away with a 7-4 victory. In the win, Calvin Pickard, who started over Stuart Skinner, 4 goals allowed on 28 shots. In the loss, Darcy Kemper allowed 5 goals on 34 shots. Evan Bouchard had 2 goals, including the game winner. And Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl had key primary assists on the tying and game-winning goals. LA still had a 2-1 series lead, but the Oilers win. And so far, every team on home ice has won at this point.
Yeah, let's go back to the 2 things. The decision by Chris Knobloch to start Calvin Pickard. I mean, Stuart Skinner was awful in both games in LA, so no risk there. And this is not a Winnipeg Jets situation where you have a clear number 1. So why not play the other guy and give him a chance? Comes through with a win. And 2, when the game's tied and you're on the road and the crowd's already in it, I disagreed completely with Jim Hiller's decision to challenge that, because it wasn't clear interference. It wasn't that was such a risk, a long shot, that I thought the risk wasn't worth it. And it blew up in his face spectacularly. I mean, as you said, immediately they scored. No, we're not overturning it. You go on this, you're penalized for delay of game, and they score immediately. I disagreed with that wholeheartedly, and you're nodding.
Yep.
So I assume you agree with that statement.
100%. First of all, there was no goalie interference. Darcy Kemper was not prevented in any way from playing his position due to contact. So I have no idea. And look, there are guys that are somewhere in the arena watching video, and their job is to let him know, hey, you should challenge that or not, or tell him, I really think this is this. It's his decision ultimately to do it or not.
Right.
But he's getting advice from somebody. And he either got bad advice or he made a bad decision on his own. It was certainly a terrible challenge. Number one, just forget the score and the situation. There was no goalie interference. But to do it in that situation on the road, where if you don't win, the crowd's already going nuts and you're going to give them a power play, it just wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth the risk. Even if you think you're right, I don't think it's worth the risk. However, I will ask you, and I've talked to our mutual friend, former Prick boss, now Prick friend, Paul, who's a big Kings fan. And I don't know how you overturn the call on the ice, which was no goal, on the kick by Kane, unless you have definitive video evidence that he touched the puck. And I've watched a bunch of different angles from both the U.S. broadcast and the Canadian broadcast. And I'm a Kings fan, so take that for what it's worth. I never saw him hit the puck with his stick. And people are saying, oh, but the puck changed direction. I don't care. If you're going to overturn the call on the ice, it can't be, well, I think he touched it. It has to be, I saw him hit the puck with his stick. I never saw that. Did you see that?
I don't know that it has to be him that touches it with his stick. The kicking motion is only if that's the last thing that propels it into the net. If you kick the puck at any point on the ice and somebody else then knocks it into the net, I don't think it's a kicked in goal. So the referee on the ice sees he kicked it, I blow it dead. They then see it changes directions after he kicks it, so something else hit it. Therefore, it's still a good goal.
So you believe if a player kicks the puck to the net and it goes off the goalie, that's a good goal?
I that's a tough one. Maybe, I don't know, because and this is why we say if a puck goes off your foot, if the last thing it touched on an attacking player is their foot, then it's no goal, no matter what happened after that. That would be a nice clear-cut rule, but it's not. So I don't know definitively what the rule is in that one. I was surprised they overturned it based on what we saw on the ice, but huge moment, obviously. I mean, just a chaos. What should have been no goal goes to now it's a goal, and now you went from leading to losing in the span of 10 seconds, basically, because of a couple of bad decisions, one by the NHL, one by the head coach. So as for the stats in this game, Evan Bouchard got his 14th career playoff goal, surpassing Randy Gregg, third most by an Oilers defenseman in franchise history. The only players with more, Paul Coffey and Charlie Huddy. And Evander Kane, who made the return in game 2, first time he's played all season.
Yep.
He gets in this game. He scores a goal as well. So they scored 10 seconds apart, those two goals. Evander Kane's kicked in goal, Evan Bouchard's power play goal, the fourth fastest pair of playoff goals in Oilers history. The fastest is 7 seconds apart, set twice, once by Ken Linesman and Dave Hunter, in 83. The other by Yari Curry and Glenn Anderson in 85. So 2 goals, 10 seconds, and the entire series, I think, changed in that moment.
Hold that thought as we go to game number 4, which was the final game of all the games we're recapping before we hit record on this episode. LA would score the only goal of the opening period, led 1-0 after 1. Second period, they extended to 2-0, although the Oilers did score a power play goal to cut it to 2-1. But the Kings came back and scored again and had a 3-1 lead going into the third period. In the third, the Oilers would score twice, including the game-tying goal with 29 seconds left and the goalie pulled. We would go to overtime where Leon Draisaitl scored on the power play, and the Oilers pull out another one, 4-3, to even the series at 2-2. In the win, Calvin Pickard, 3 goals allowed on 41 shots. In the loss, Darcy Kemper, 4 goals allowed on 48 shots. Evan Bouchard, another 2-goal game, including both goals in the third period. And Leon Draisaitl had 3 assists and a goal. The goal was the overtime game winner. So far in the series, Adrian Kempe leads the Kings with 4 goals and 9 points. For the Oilers, Evan Bouchard leads them with 4 goals. Leon Draisaitl has 9 points. The series again tied at 2-2.
Well, Leon Draisaitl, by the way, he had the goal and an assist in this game. He now has a playoff point streak against the Kings of 18 games. and that's the third longest playoff point streak against a single franchise in NHL history. The two players that have a longer streak, both 19 games. So if he scores in game 5, he will extend that. He will tie these guys. Mark Messier had a 19-game goal-scoring streak against the Kings, and Wayne Gretzky had a 19-game goal-scoring streak against the Flames back in the day. As for this game, there was a couple of moments. First of all, Trevor Moore's one-handed goal was amazing. But in a
that was in game
effort,
3. That was in game 3.
Oh, was it in game 3?
Yeah. It was amazing, though. Yeah.
For this one, Quentin Byfield, who's had a great series and is having a great run here at the end of the year, he had a chance to clear the puck, and Evan Bouchard held it in right at the blue line. They then go on to score that game. The Bouch bomb. When they're playing in Edmonton and the puck goes to Evan Bouchard at the point, you can hear the buzz in the crowd as they are waiting for him to shoot it. And when that shot went off to tie the game, my goodness, that place was up for grabs. They were extremely excited about that game.
You think?
My goodness. And then the game-winning one on the power play. So the power play is waking up for Edmonton. The Kings don't get a power play goal for the first game this series. And I'll ask you, because again, I talked about it. I touched on it at the top, the hatred. How much do you hate Evan Bouchard right now, and how much do you hate Corey Perry?
Well, Corey Perry is the most hated player I've ever hated in hockey.
Corey Perry's having a great series.
I mean, he goes from the Ducks, where I hated his guts, to the Oilers, where I hate his guts. So,
well, he had a lot of stops in between, but yeah.
Yeah, but those two. So yeah, I hate his guts. Evan Bouchard, I don't hate. He's just a good player.
Yeah.
Same thing with Connor McDavid. I mean, I don't hate him. I mean, I hate that we play against him because he's so damn good, but Corey Perry, I hate, sure. I just want to say the Kings have been the better team. And if you scored all the periods, they've been the better team in more periods than the Oilers, but the third periods have been an issue, mostly the two in Edmonton. In game,
not necessarily. How about game 1's third period? That wasn't great.
It wasn't, but at least in that one, they had the goalie pulled for 2 of the goals. So there was a man advantage. In the third period in game 3 and the third period in game 4, the Kings played not to lose. They played like they were killing a power play. They stopped attacking. They just stayed in their own zone. They stood at their own blue line and let the Oilers keep coming and coming and coming and coming. And it's like, you can't do that. You've been especially in game 4, they were clearly the better team in the first 2 periods.
Through 2 periods, the Kings were out shooting the Oilers 28-15. And then in the third period, 16-6.
But they took their foot off the gas. And why? 100%. They're the better team in this series. It made no sense. And they did it. And it was one thing, you do it in game 3 and you're like, okay, that came back to bite us. We're not going to do it again. They did it again. It blows my mind. It's the whole football thing where you're kicking the other team's ass, and it's like, oh, we've got the lead. Let's just run the ball and we'll punt and we just won't make any mistakes. And then you let them come back and win. Keep playing the way you've been playing the whole game. They did that in game 2. Forget about the score. Play your game. So that's obviously going to be a lot of Locked On LA Kings coming up.
Well, that's the leadership that you would think is there in the team, because they've got 2 guys that have won multiple Stanley Cups.
But their head coach is in his first playoffs, and he had
But you can't tell me the coach is telling them, take your foot off the gas. Let's play conservative.
It looks like it to me. It looks like when overtime started, it was a different team. They started skating again. It wasn't like the players I think he's telling them to back off and just play defensive, which is just ridiculous.
Well, they did get out. I mean, they had the power play going, but they got outshot 17-7 in overtime in this one. So not it's still 2-2.
Yep.
Going home for game 5.
And if they win their home, you're going to win the series.
Yeah, I still think you're going to win this series.
That was a total blown opportunity. 29 seconds
This
away.
would have closed it out.
Yeah.
This would have closed it out, and you were 29 seconds away. So Frustration for sure, but I still think you win the series. And this is all
Yeah.
water under the bridge, learning lessons going forward.
We'll see. All right, let's move on to the Canadiens Capitals, the 1 seed in the East against the 8th seed, the final wildcard team in the East. Of course, Capitals cruised into the playoffs, easily winning the Metropolitan Division and finishing with the top record in the East. Montreal, of course, had to scratch and claw their way into the playoffs, clinching on the second to last day of the regular season. Washington goalie Logan Thompson missed the final 7 games of the regular season. I didn't think he would start game 1. He would. So how effective would he be was a big story going into it. As for game 1, Capitals led 2-0 with a goal, a power play goal, and a regular even strength goal. And those were actually they had a 2-goal lead. They scored one in the first, a power play goal, and then a goal in the second. So 2-0 Capitals going into the third. The Canadiens, though, rally with 2 goals in the third, 1 on the power play. They tie it up at 2-2, and we go overtime. But in overtime, Alexander Ovechkin scores his first career playoff overtime goal, and the Capitals pull out a 3-2 win. Logan Thompson looked great, allowed 2 goals on 35 shots in the win. Sam Montembeault in the loss allowed 3 goals on 32 shots. Alexander Ovechkin, 2 goals, including the overtime game winner. Dylan Strome had 3 assists. First playoff win for the Capitals since May 7th of 2022. They have lost 7 straight playoff games.
No more. They get a win. And as you mentioned, Alexander Ovechkin, the greatest goal scorer in NHL history, gets his first career playoff overtime goal. It's his 29th career playoff power play goal, which ties him with Mario Lemieux for 7th all time. And it is his 73rd and 74th career playoff goals total that move him into a tie with Joe Pavelski for 13th all time. So he's got a long way to go to catch Wayne Gretzky in the playoff goal scoring record, but that a great game and great moment for the Great 8 as he gets them started with a playoff win.
All right, on to game number 2, scoreless opening period. Montreal, though, would get the first goal of the game. Washington, though, would respond with a pair of goals, and the Capitals led 2-1 going into the third period. In the third, Washington puts it away with an empty netter. 3-1, they get the victory and take a 2-0 series lead. Logan Thompson, again, a good game, 1 goal on 26 shots in the win. And the loss, Sam Montembeault allowed 2 goals on 31 shots. Connor McMichael, a pair of goals in the Game 2 victory.
Yeah, the Canadiens have played well defensively. They're just not getting any offense. And through 2 games on the road, nothing lost yet. You haven't lost on home ice yet. So you're still in the series, but not the start they wanted. But defensively, very impressive start for Montreal. They just got to get their offense going if they want to get back in the series at that point.
All right, game 3 series would shift to Montreal. It's talked about a lot, but there's a good reason for it. The atmosphere for playoff hockey at the Bell Center is pretty spectacular. Capitals, though, would get the first goal to quiet the Montreal crowd, at least for a little while. But the Canadiens would respond, tie it up at 1-1 after 1. Now, during the second period, during a TV timeout, Habs goalie Sam Montembeault left the ice with an apparent injury, and he was replaced by rookie Jakub Dobiš. So they go away to commercial, they come back, and there's a new goalie in the game. The 2 teams would then trade goals. Canadiens score, Capitals respond. Montreal, though, gets another goal and takes a 3-2 lead after 2 periods. As for the second period, what ended, both teams would get together. There would be some rough stuff, and then it would culminate in Josh Anderson of the Canadiens and Tom Wilson of the Capitals getting into it on the Washington bench. They were both on the bench. The linesmen's on them with the bench. They're rolling around. Pandemonium ensues as the guy. Both teams are out there on the ice going off, and so there's only 4 officials to try and break all this up. So it got a little out of hand for sure. I don't know the last time I don't know that I've ever seen 2 players on the same bench going at it. So that was interesting. On to the third period. Yeah, fighting. Or any other reason. I mean,
the fascinating thing was that the bench was empty. Like, it's one thing if a player goes into the bench after a player, but everybody else all his teammates are there. The bench was empty. As you said, the rest of the team is on the ice. So they went from the door all the way to the, and if there hadn't been a divider between the 2 benches, they would have just kept going. And the linesman dancing the whole way with them. It was wild to see.
In the third, Washington would tie it up, but Montreal closes out the game with 3 straight goals to pull out a 6-3 win. During that period, the third period, Caps goalie Logan Thompson got run into by teammate Dylan Strome. He was injured, had to leave the game, was not putting any weight on his left leg. It looked really bad. So the 2 starting goalies both leave with injuries. Sam Montembeault allowed 2 goals on 13 shots before he left. Jakub Dobeš allowed a goal on 8 shots in the win. And Logan Thompson allowed 5 goals on 35 shots before leaving. Charlie Lindgren allowed a goal on 5 shots in relief. Weird stat in this one. Washington is the only NHL team that has a losing record after winning the first 2 games of a playoff series. They're 4-6.
That is a weird stat.
That is a weird stat, yes.
I did not know that. Jakub Dobeš, if you remember in the regular season, was one of those guys that he had a great road record, but was not great on home ice. He was winning all these games on the road, was not having as much success on home ice, but here he is on home ice getting success and getting that win, a much needed one. Alex Ovechkin, by the way, surpassing Joe Pavelski for 13th most. He had his 75th. He's now one back of Mario Lemieux for 12th all time in playoff goals. But this one, when you see 2 guys take a linesman down the bench and fight and are wrestling and are causing such chaos, I thought for sure we would see a suspension. Tom Wilson is no choir boy. He's got a thick folder at the Department of Player Safety. And Josh Anderson is not some innocent guy either. I thought this is clearly unsportsmanlike conduct. The league is probably going to crack down. All they did was fine them $5,000 each. And I'm like, if that's it, man, again, the passion, because Tom Wilson was trolling Josh Anderson after he got off there, making him look like he was a crybaby. How you stop the guy from going after him and destroying him is beyond me. Like that's again, the hatred of the playoffs. I love it. It was such a great, this is not the series that I thought would have these kind of moments. And yet, man, that was a hell of a fight going on between those 2 guys. And I think it was almost a distraction because everybody on the ice stopped to watch that. Like, oh my God, what's going on with those 2 guys, rather than fighting each other back on the ice.
On to game number 4, and to my surprise, Logan Thompson would start this game for Washington. I thought he was going to be done for the rest of the series, maybe the rest of the playoffs, but apparently it wasn't as bad as it looked. Jakub Dobeš, though, did get the start for Montreal. Sam Montembeault would be out. Scoreless opening period in this one. Washington, though, then gets the first goal of the game. In that second period, Canadians would tie it up on a power play goal, then took the lead on a second power play goal and led 2-1 going into the third. In the third, all Washington, 2 goals to take a 3-2 lead, then 2 empty net goals to seal it. And the Caps get a 5-2 victory to lead the series 3-1. In the win, Logan Thompson, 2 goals allowed on 18 shots. In the loss, Jakub Dobeš, 3 goals allowed on 24 shots. Brandon Duhaime had 2 goals for the Capitals, and Andrew Mangiapane gets the game winner. So in the series for the Capitals, Alexander Ovechkin and Connor McMichael lead the team with 3 goals each. Dylan Strome leads the team in points with 7. For the Canadians, Cole Caulfield leads them in goals with 3. Lane Hudson leading the team in points with 5.
Yeah, he's the 6th rookie defenseman, is Lane Hudson, in NHL history to have at least 5 assists in his first playoff series. So he's still got time to add to this. Ray Bourque had 7. Marc-Andre Gragnani, who I've never heard of before, but we covered him on this show in 2011. Does that name sound familiar to you, Eddie?
Not at all.
Neither to me.
Not at all.
But he had 6 back in 2011 in the conference quarterfinals. Quinn Hughes, I've heard of him. 5 in 2020. Erik Karlsson, 5 in 2010. And Janne Niinema, beautiful name, 5 back in 1997. Marc-Andre Gragnani. I'm going to look up who he played for because I've never heard of this player. People right now are yelling at their speakers.
Yeah, I remember. Was it Marc-Andre Cliche? I think I remember that guy. I don't know if you remember that name or not, but I do not remember.
I do not.
Marc-Andre Gagnani or whatever the heck his name is.
Gagnani. Looks like he played for, at the time, I'm trying to see when he had his first playoff games. Oh, my goodness. Well, no wonder we don't remember him. He was on the Buffalo Sabres. And it's been a minute since they played in the playoffs. My goodness, he played a total of 78 career NHL playoff games in the regular season and 7 in the playoffs, all with the Buffalo Sabres. He also played for the Vancouver Canucks, Carolina Hurricanes, New Jersey Devils. So moved around a little bit, but yeah, never heard of him, but he had a nice start for the Buffalo Sabres back in the day.
All right, and we're at our final series to recap the last series that got underway, and that was the Panthers taking on the Lightning, a 2-3 matchup out of the Atlantic.
Any idea why this started so late?
No, I don't know.
The playoffs started Saturday.
I don't know what's going on.
This series did not start until Tuesday.
Well, and it started in Tampa Bay, and they don't have an NBA team, so maybe there was a concert. I don't know. I don't know why it would start that late. But the Sunshine State Showdown has resulted in 5 straight years of one of these teams making it to the Stanley Cup final. They've met for the last 5 years in the postseason, and a lot of people think this maybe is the de facto Eastern Conference Finals. We shall see. Matthew Tkachuk back in the lineup for Florida after being out since the Four Nations face-off. As for game 1 in this one, Panthers would score first to take a 1-0 lead. Tampa responds with a power play goal. But the Cats would close out the scoring with a second goal and led 2-1 after 1. In the second period, Panthers scored 3 straight goals, 2 of them on the power play. The first power play came after a failed Lightning challenge for goalie interference. Tampa Bay would also score the last goal of the game, but by that point, too little too late. 5-2 is the, well, actually, I'm sorry, 5-2 after the second period. Third period, another power play goal for Florida. 6-2 would be the final, a convincing win for the defending champions. In the win, Sergei Bobrovsky allowed 2 goals on 22 shots. Andrei Vasilevsky, 6 goals on 17 shots. Florida defenseman Nate Schmidt with 2 goals in the win, and Matthew Tkachuk, first game back, 2 goals and an assist.
I've got another instant trivia coming up for those that love watching Eddie try and think of answers off the top of his head. So stay tuned for that in just a second. But Nate Schmidt and Matthew Tkachuk both finding the back of the net in the span of 14 seconds, the fastest 2 goals in franchise history. Previous was 25 seconds in game 1 of the 1996 conference quarterfinals when Ray Shepard and Mike Huff scored 15 or 25 seconds apart. Nate Schmidt, the 4th defenseman in the past 30 years to score multiple goals in his playoff debut with the team. The others, Mike Green with Washington in 2008, Janne Laukkanen in 2000 with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Sergei Gonchar in game 1 of the 95 conference quarterfinals with Washington. Now, here's the trivia, Eddie. Nate Schmidt has now scored a playoff goal for 4 different franchises. Only Larry Murphy and Paul Coffey have more, with 5 franchises each. Name the 4 playoff teams Nate Schmidt has scored a playoff goal for.
Florida, Vegas.
Yes.
Washington.
That's correct.
And Winnipeg?
That is correct. Well done. The man knows his Nate Schmidt. So,
apparently, I didn't know it, but I guess I do.
All that knowledge is in there somewhere.
Yeah, and of
but
course,
yeah, he's what a hell of a start for him, and
I'll say
unlikely hero for sure.
On to game number 2, Florida would score the opening goal of this one, the only goal of the opening period, and led 1-0. No scoring in the second and the third. Florida would ice it with an empty net goal. 2-0 win for the Panthers, and they lead the series 2-0, having won both of the opening games on the road. There was a hit in the third period that we need to discuss in a moment, but in the win, Sergei Bobrovsky allowed no goals on 19 shots, so the playoff shutout for Bob. In the loss, Andrei Vasilevsky allowed 1 goal on 22 shots in the tough luck loss for him. Florida defenseman Nate Schmidt gets the game-winning goal again. 5 goals in the regular season. He now has 3 in the playoffs. That's 1 more this postseason at this point than Braden Point, Jake Gensel, Nikita Kucherov, and Brendan Hagel combined. Nikita Kucherov, your Art Ross Trophy winner at this point, had 1 assist so far through the first 2 games of the series. Lightning had the
absolutely amazing that Nate Schmidt off to the start he is.
Lightning had the 5th best power play in the league, 0 for 5 in game 2. They had 2 shots on goal, 0 for 8 in the series at that point. And I mentioned the hit. 10 minutes left. Tampa Bay's Brandon Hagel put a big hit on Florida captain Alexander Barkov. Barkov did not have the puck or didn't touch the puck. It was near him, but he didn't touch it. Obviously an interference penalty. And because of the violence of the hit, they gave Hagel a 5-minute major. He then was suspended for 1 game. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I would say it was earned. That was a dirty hit, in my opinion. And you watch that, and that's, again, the hatred that comes with it. This is a regional rivalry. These are teams that don't like each other. Barkov's a key player. Hagel is not. Hagel's a good player, but that seemed like an intentional hit on I'm going to take a shot at a guy that is a key player for them. And if I can get him out of there, all the better. So I agree with the suspension, but I'm very surprised it happened, because these are guys that you don't usually see, or I should say, these are suspensions you don't usually see from the Department of Player Safety in the playoffs. Regular season, absolutely. In the playoffs, I was very surprised to see this ruled as suspension. I thought it was the right decision, but I was surprised to see it. Nate Schmidt, by the way, are you moving on to game 3?
I was. Go ahead.
I will say that he is the second Panthers defenseman to score in each of the team's first 2 games of a postseason. The only other one to do it, Jason Woolley. Eddie loves him from back in the day in 1996. He's also the 6th defenseman in NHL history to score 3 goals through the first 2 playoff games of a season. The others, Nick Lidstrom, Steve Chason, Mike O'Connell, Dick Redmond, and George Boucher. George Boucher, by the way, 104 years ago, so it's been a minute for him. And he's the second defenseman in the NHL's modern era since 1943 to score the game winner in each of his team's first 2 playoff games. The other, Nick Lidstrom, back in 2007. So historic run for Nate Schmidt. Can he keep it going in game 3?
Well, let's get to game 3, our final game to recap, as the series would shift. Well, not out of state. It would stay in state, but it would go from Tampa Bay, St. Pete to Sunrise, and Florida would open up the scoring. But after that, it was pretty much all Tampa Bay. The Lightning tied it at 1-1 after 1. They score another goal in the second to make it 2-0, and then 3 more goals, including an empty netter in the third. Road teams have won every game so far in the series. Florida's still leading it 2-1. But as far as the goaltending, Sergei Bobrovsky allowed 4 goals on 21 shots in the loss. Andrei Vasilevsky, 1 goal allowed on 34 shots in the win, so he bounced back with a nice effort. Jake Gensel had a goal and 2 assists. Nikita Kucherov, 3 assists. And Braden Point had a goal, so the big guns showing up for Florida in this one. But we had another controversial hit in this one when Matthew Tkachuk hit Jake Gensel late. 5-minute major called on the play. But I have not heard of a suspension for Matthew Tkachuk.
We would have already heard about it, and there will be no suspension coming. I did like the war of words between Paul Maurice and John Cooper. So
why no suspension for Matthew Tkachuk after you just suspended a guy for doing pretty much the same thing?
Yeah, and I would you got to think that the Hagel hit on Barkov was part of the reason Tkachuk took the run at Gensel. No Tkachuk has ever passed up an opportunity to hit somebody on the ice. 2, that's got to be a part of it, right? Like the retaliation, you hit our star player, I'm going to go after one of your star players. He didn't go after a depth guy. So
that's what makes it worse for me.
And I agree.
He's a repeat offender. I don't know that Brendan Hagel is. Like, I don't get how he doesn't get a 1-game suspension, especially after it just happened on the other side on the previous game.
Yeah. And that's, again, part of the hatred. You don't think you hate the Tkachuks enough. That's going to be that this dirty SOB takes a run at one of our star players and he doesn't get suspended, but our guy does get suspended. Yeah, it's a problem. And it's why the NHL's inconsistency. We've talked about this for a long time. This is just brutal what they're doing here. That it deserved a suspension. If you're going to suspend Hagel, you have to suspend Tkachuk, and they didn't, and that's unfortunate. So after game 3, which is when Hagel hit Barkov, Paul Maurice says going into game 3, the only players we hit, or after game 2, I should say, going into game 3, Paul Maurice says the only players we hit are the ones that have the pucks. So after game 4 or after game 3, John Cooper is asked, "Hey, what about that hit?" And he said, "All I know is the only players we hit are the ones that have the pucks." So he just used the exact same quote. And the play in the media is going, there's phone calls going to the league. This kind of stuff it's going to be a fiery game 4 because the home team has lost every game. Rivals, big hits, dirty players on both sides. It's going to be a fun game 4. And this is by far the most entertaining series to me. By far, because of the bad blood that goes into it, the rivalry, and the quality of the two teams.
Well, as far as the playoffs so far, I don't know how you feel about it, but I think it's been pretty good. We have no sweeps, which is nice. After 9 days of Stanley Cup playoff action, I think no sweeps, so that's good.
Yep.
Everything in the West is even. All 4 series in the West are now a best of 3. So we're guaranteed at least 6 games in every series in the West. Winnipeg, St. Louis is 2-2. Dallas, Colorado is 2-2. Vegas, Minnesota 2-2. And LA, Edmonton is 2-2. Not quite as competitive over in the East, where 3 of the series are 3-1. Toronto leads Ottawa 3-1. Washington on Montreal 3-1. And Carolina leads New Jersey 3-1. Florida's got the 2-1 series over Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that could be 3-1.
It could be.
The only reason it's not is because we haven't played 4 games yet.
So, but all in all, pretty good. I thought the weekend was pretty spectacular with TNT, TBS having the quadruple headers of games.
Yeah,
where you just turn your TV on if you're a hockey fan in the morning and just leave it there until late at night. Pretty good stuff. Pretty good.
Their
pretty
coverage
good
has been exceptional. ESPN can kiss my ass. I have not been able to watch any of their games.
Yeah, I know. I've heard that some of them they haven't had. Some of the broadcasts have been remote broadcasts, and to do that for the playoffs is, I know, saving money and all that. I almost said a bad word. It's the playoffs. If you want to,
think they're doing that for the NBA?
No, I don't think they're doing that for the NBA.
Oh, really? I wonder why they would pick that. But the other problem is they've blacked out their games from ESPN Plus. TNT's games are all streaming on Max. So I, as a cord cutter, have been watching all the games on TNT. I have not seen a single game that's broadcast by ESPN yet. So I'm listening to a lot of games on Sirius XM because I have that, and they have every playoff game. And I've greatly enjoyed some of the regional broadcasts. But terrible coverage there. As for, there hasn't been any upsets yet. To me, I'm surprised Toronto's up 3-1. I'm not surprised Washington's going to advance. I'm not surprised Carolina's going to advance. At least it looks like they will. Minnesota would surprise me a lot if they come back and win, or they come through and win this series against Vegas. That would be a big shock to me and a big help to your Kings once they dispatch the Oilers.
And we'll see.
And move on. So Kings Wild in the second round would be a much easier matchup for them. 1, they would have home ice advantage, and 2, it's not Vegas. And but Dallas, Colorado has been more competitive than I thought it would be. I thought without Heiskanen and the way Dallas ended the series or season, I thought Colorado would win this series pretty easily, and it's tied up. And then St. Louis has surprised me. They've played a lot better than I thought. Certainly on home ice, they looked unbeatable. We'll see how these go in Game 5. But again, for the 4 playoff series in the West, 79%, which means 4 out of 5. So of the 4 series, whoever wins Game 3, probably 3 of the 4 are going to advance. One of them, though, whoever loses Game 5 is going to come back and win this series. So keep an eye out for that. By this time next week, we will know what the second round looks like.
Indeed. All right. That's going to do it for our first period of our YouTube show. If you enjoyed this and want to hear more, check out the remaining 2 periods of our show on our podcast. Search Puck Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you are already listening to the podcast, don't worry. The second and third periods are coming up in just a moment. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm Eddie Garcia. He's Doug Stolhand, and we will talk to you next time with another edition of the Puck Podcast.